NIL is back in the headlines as we see the College Sports Commission already making waves and under scrutiny for how it's operating in the NIL space. And if this is how things are going to be, the impact could be quite negative for a program like BYU.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer at the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 13-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider as your host here on this podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Can take control of your finances and do it with their friends at Monarch Money. Use the promo code Locked On College at monarchmoney.com and get half off your first year. All right, coming up on today's show, we're talking about the new College Sports Commission and how it apparently is already screwing things up when it comes to NIL. Then we're going to talk about AJ DeBonsa. His NIL is not slowing down anytime soon as Fanatics has given him just a monster deal, and we'll talk about the impact it could have on BYU basketball, and then we'll finish up today's front. When it comes to Big 12 Media Days, apologies for the lack of podcasts this week. Just had a cavalcade of mishaps and snafus, but we are back, and we'll talk about a couple of things I heard and took away from Big 12 Media Days earlier this week in Frisco, Texas. All right. So let's talk about the College Sports Commission. If you did not see it yesterday, there is already scrutiny coming for this new entity that is supposed to be monitoring NIL, approving said deals that are, according to the Deloitte Clearinghouse, the NIL Go, that either you're accepted or they're rejecting deals. There's reports out there that more than 1,200 NIL deals have been submitted to Deloitte. Now, a third of them apparently have been approved. There have been 80 that have been denied and have been essentially rejected and sent back to the schools or the collectives or the athletes who have submitted them for them to rework them and then resubmit. But then we're kind of operating in a gray space with a lot of other ones out there when it comes to if and when they will be approved. The biggest thing I'm taking away from this, and a lot of people are taking away from this, is that if these deals, and we're seeing it from reports out there across the national media, that if deals are being submitted by various collectives of various universities, they're almost universally being rejected. And as one report I read said, that essentially the word that the College Sports Commission wants to get across to everybody in the college athletics universe when it comes to NIL is that if a collective is going to be involved in working deals for athletes at a university, they need to effectively morph into a marketing or an agency, a marketing directory or an agency, for lack of a better term, and help broker deals that way versus, in their minds, being a pay-for-play entity in college sports. Now, a lot of coaches out there, I was at Big 12 Media Days hearing these coaches kind of pontificate on what they wanted to see from NIL, and I can understand why they wanted some guardrails put on this, but the bigger point I'm seeing with this is welcome to the new era of college athletics, and it's much like the old era, because if this is how things are going to go, where essentially if a collective submits a marketing or an NIL deal and on behalf of an athlete for their university, and it's just being rejected outright because of its association with a collective, lawsuits are not far behind. This is going to go right back into the legal system. We are going to have lawsuits, lawyers, billable hours, damages, all kinds of stuff is going to come out of this. And quite frankly, if it holds up under the scrutiny of the law when it comes to the House settlement, this College Sports Commission, if this is how things are going to operate, BYU's collectives, the Royal Blue Collective and Coug Connect, they're going to have to completely rethink how they're operating in this space. Because if they don't, BYU can find itself at a massive disadvantage, because we all know BYU in eras past, when we knew that money was flowing under the table, bagmen and the like, BYU never partook in that. And I've had enough conversations with enough coaches involved at BYU over the years that essentially said as much. And I can believe that BYU always was saying, hey, I know the rules are this. We know other hijinks are going on, but we have to operate in this space, and we're going to play by the rules. The rules brought money above board when it came to NIL the past 3 or 4 years, and BYU's competed quite favorably. But if the College Sports Commission, if this can hold up under the rule of law, or if these college sports commissioners, Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner among them, say that this is how the new era of college sports is going to look like, the guardrails are in place, as Brett Yormark said on Tuesday at Big 12 Media Days, that the punishments will be punitive. That's the quote. He is punitive punishments if you break these rules. Well, guess what? BYU could find themselves at a disadvantage, because I don't believe for a second that a lot of programs out there not named BYU are going to be happy with this system, and B, are going to play by said rules. You'll be forcing stuff back under the table. Bagmen will reappear. You'll hear all of these stories about how players are gaming the system. And if that's how the college sports environment wants to operate, yeah, BYU is going to find itself at a disadvantage. On the flip side of it, I will say this. BYU has a lot of boosters, and trust me, there are a lot of them out there who are very eager to help BYU in any way that they possibly can. And if this is what this is going to be, where you have to have a legitimate business entity that is submitting an NIL deal for an athlete to do promotions, autograph signings, whatever it is, in exchange for the money that's exchanging hands, BYU's boosters are savvy enough to do that through their own business entities, I believe, and they can cut out the Coug Connects or the Royal Blues if necessary. I just don't believe this is going to hold up. I don't think for a second that this, this took effect. The House settlement took effect July 1. It's July 11th. We are 10 days into this, and we're already hearing echoes of, hey, this is not going to hold up in court. We're going to have lawsuits being filed about this. We're already hearing from other collectives. I think the Blue A collective up there at Utah State laid out essentially what they had done for an athlete. And it looked on the up and up for me, but they said it was rejected outright because it was associated by the Blue A collective. I felt like when the House settlement went through and reading up on what they're planning to do with NIL and the fact that Deloitte was going to be able to say this is market rate or this is what is how things are going to operate, feels really, really out of left field here, that we have kind of just put ourselves right back where we started, and it's only going to take a lawsuit or two, and then all of a sudden those guardrails that have been espoused and crowed about by guys like Brett Yormark, yeah, they're gone, and the wild, wild west is back at it. And good, bad, or indifferent, that's kind of where things stand right now. And I'm not sure if the impact for BYU is going to be positive or negative, but if the current environment, if that's what it's going to be, I've got a lot of thought that BYU will be at a disadvantage once again, because we all know BYU will not break the rules that are in effect when other programs, they're willing to bend said rules. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit about AJ DeBonsa. How in the heck did he get a 10-figure NIL deal with Fanatics that is going to extend beyond his time at BYU? Well, apparently that one got through the clearinghouse, or was in effect probably before the clearinghouse came into effect. We'll talk about what the impact could be for BYU basketball. We'll get to that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Have you ever wished managing your money felt easier with Monarch Money? It can be just that. Whether you're growing your savings or planning to make a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat and lets you stay on top of it. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. And in addition to that, managing your money, you're also building wealth because you're on top of it. You're seeing it all from start to finish. The best part is when it comes to Monarch Money, it can help you set financial goals and reach them faster than you ever thought possible, and also helps you stay on the same page with your significant other when it comes to your financial situation. So take control of your finances and do it with our friends over at Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing well out there. Once again, thank you for bearing with me this week. I picked maybe the worst hotel I could have ever picked, and it wasn't the fact that it was a low-end hotel. It was a Marriott property down there in Frisco, but the internet, man, absolutely brutal. And just with the schedule and how packed things were down there at the Ford Center at the Star, which, by the way, is an incredible facility, just did not get as much content produced as I anticipated. But I've got a lot of interviews that we'll be getting to in the coming days. So thank you for bearing with me. But at the same time, that was a very fruitful trip to Frisco, Texas, notwithstanding the weather delays, both going to Dallas and getting out of there. But that's another story for another day. Let's talk about AJ DeBonsa. If you did not see this news, now his first pitch for the Boston Red Sox last night, a little bit of a looper, but hey, he's a hooper, and I understand he's probably very rarely, if ever, played baseball or had to even throw a baseball off a mound, because he's already 6'9". Standing on that mound, was it make him 7+ feet tall? And the thing is, that notwithstanding, if you did not see the news earlier this week, he has got a new NIL deal that's going to cover sports cards, memorabilia, essentially anything and everything associating when it comes to name, image, and likeness with AJ DeBonsa, with Fanatics. Now, Fanatics has become the dominant force in the sports retail space. Essentially every league and every team out there, if they do not use Fanatics as their official apparel online provider, very few aren't doing that. And they are reportedly giving AJ DeBonsa a 8-figure deal, 8 figures, which if you can do the math, that's $10+ million to be a part of this. Now, it's an NIL deal that is going to take him through his time at BYU, even on into his pro career. And it's money well spent in terms of Fanatics, because if AJ is everything he's cracked up to be, we're talking about a generational type talent who is going to be able to just make oodles and oodles of money when it comes to playing basketball for however long he does play hoops. But more importantly than that, he's already building an empire, for lack of a better term, off the court. He's got NIL deals with Red Bull. He's got one with Nike. BYU, obviously, with their collectives, are reportedly paying him, according to it was a Sports Business Journal or Sportico that had this report, more than $6 million in terms of him playing for BYU this year alone. And if he's got an 8-figure deal that's $10 million+ from Fanatics to carry him through his time at BYU, and game-worn jerseys, memorabilia, signed trading cards, all that stuff is part of this, they're thinking that this is going to pay off in spades. And I can tell you, and I've said it before on this podcast, that BYU, from their vantage point, whether you believe BYU paid $4, $5, $6, or $7 million, those are all the various reports of how much NIL BYU is directly compensating AJ for playing at BYU for this upcoming season. BYU's thought process is they were going to get, in terms of the impact that he could bring, the exposure, the fame, all the eyeballs he'll bring to BYU because of who AJ DeBonsa is. BYU believed they would cash in on it tenfold, meaning, okay, if the report yesterday, I think it was Sportico, said $6 million is the more than $6 million that BYU is paying him in NIL, BYU believes that the exposure he will bring to BYU basketball is worth well over $60 million. You can guarantee that Fanatics, if they're signing him to a deal that's $10+ million right now, they're expecting to probably cash in tenfold themselves. AJ DeBonsa is got an orbit or a gravitational pull about him that very few athletes have ever at the college level, and more importantly than that, could have in his basketball career. We are seeing NBA players sign deals. I believe Devin Booker set an NBA record. It was like $75 million annually on the back end of his current deal, with a 2-year, $145 million contract extension. By the time AJ DeBonsa is getting towards the age that Devin Booker's at, his annual salary in basketball alone could be $100 million. That's where we're going in the basketball realm of things. But looking at the near-term impact of this is that the more AJ DeBonsa does, the more eyeballs he attracts to BYU, the more that BYU is mentioned by him, because at the same time, when he's out there going to Fenway Park near his hometown of Brockton, Massachusetts, and throwing out the first pitch, people are going to remember, hey, this kid's going to BYU. Why in the world is a kid from Brockton, Massachusetts ending up in Provo, Utah to play college basketball? And that's going to lead them, I think, to some genuine curiosity about what BYU is all about and why he picked BYU basketball, who Kevin Young is, what BYU stands, everything that he is doing. And the other thing about it is AJ's not hiding who he's playing for. That's one thing I will always appreciate about him as a young man and his family in particular, is they've been very straightforward about why BYU was the right fit they thought for AJ and why they believe he's going to succeed in Provo. There's been a lot of people out there that probably questioned why he picked BYU. He could have gone anywhere in this country. The Dukes, the North Carolinas, any which program that of renown that you believe is a blue blood in college basketball would have fallen all over themselves to have AJ DeBonsa playing for their basketball program, but he picked Brigham Young University. It shows that BYU's got cachet on a national level like they've never really had before. And I got massive respect for it. And I'm looking forward to seeing what this young man can do for BYU, because the impact is going to be felt on the court. Obviously, we're all hoping that he can lead BYU to that promised land that is the Final Four, maybe a national championship. That's out there when it comes to the on the court stuff, but off the court, he's a force unto himself, unlike many athletes his age ever have been or will be. There's the LeBrons, there's the Carmelo Anthonys. Well, guess what? AJ DeBonsa, he is that same type of player in terms of what he's capable of doing, the revenue he's able to generate at this age, and quite frankly, the pull that he has when it comes to basketball and pop culture by extension. It's going to be an incredible season to see how things progress with him at BYU, but beyond that, how he continues to progress just in terms of his overall marketing as an athlete. And as I mentioned, the empire that he's building, it's already now in the tens of millions of dollars. So think about that. This kid is going to leave BYU. Is his net worth, I know that on 3 NIL valuation said $4.7 million. That feels like just a glaring under. He's got a 10 million plus. If that report is true about Fanatics, $10+ million for an NIL deal. This kid, his net worth is already off the charts, and he hasn't even taken the court officially in college basketball. It's absolutely remarkable. And the nice part is BYU has been associated to him with AJ DeBonsa and vice versa for months now, and the benefits are obviously coming for both sides. All right, we'll finish up today's show looking back on Big 12 Media Days. I had a great time down there in Frisco, picked up some stuff just talking to people on the side. Like I said, I've got interviews that will be playing on coming episodes of the show, but I want to give you a general feel for the biggest takeaways I had from Big 12 Media Days. And one thing in particular, Kalani Sitake took an idea that I can't say I've espoused the same type of idea, but he's taken an idea that I have hatched myself, pun not intended, and he has taken it to a whole other level. And we'll try and make heads and tails of why he believes that BYU should only play Power 4 opponents straight out. That's it. That's all he wants to play. And we'll talk about all that and more from Big 12 Media Days next. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing well on this Friday. Now, some of you maybe, if you're watching this on YouTube, may be noticing I'm wearing a new hat. It's actually a hat I've had for quite a while, but I've talked often about joining the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. And I'm giving a shout out to Mark, who's one of our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. He's got a marketing, agency. It's like an apparel business. And he sent this to me ages ago and said, hey, if you have a chance to wear it on your show, please do. And I never really got a firm answer if I could or couldn't because he wasn't sponsoring with the show. And I just said, you know what? I'm done with the nonsense. So, Mark, if you want stuff like this, because this is like one of a kind right now. I know Mark wants to make more of them, but we'll see if we can do that down the line. But if you want something like this, I'll get you in contact with Mark. Reach out to us, lockedonbyu@gmail.com, and we can get you squared away with some pretty sweet swag like this here cap. I think Mark's doing a really, really cool thing. And also, just another plug. Join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group, the inside scoop on all things BYU. Link is in the show notes below, and it's just $5 a month to be a part of the group and getting the inside intel I am gleaning when it comes to BYU athletics. All right, so before we go on today's show, I was at Big 12 Media Days earlier this week, if you missed that. But the bigger thing is as I was down there in Frisco, I can tell you that BYU is pretty darn well respected across this league. I had conversations with media members from essentially every team, I think, across the Big 12. And to a man or woman that I talked to down there, they talked a lot about how professional BYU's athletes were and how respectful they were, and essentially just how well spoken and how good at interviews they were when it came to representing BYU and the university itself. Now, I think a lot of that goes to the caliber of athletes that BYU took to the event, guys like LJ Martin, Chase Roberts, Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker, and Keanu Tanavasa. They all represented BYU extremely well. Kalani Sitake, he is a prince of a human being, and I absolutely love the dude, and he always puts on for BYU. But even guys like Brian Santiago, and I had conversations with all these guys that will be playing on future editions of this podcast in the next week or so, because I don't want to let the material get too dated. But the bigger point is BYU is well respected across this conference, and Kalani Sitake, I thought he made a very keen proposal. He said that he wants he wants to see scheduling changed in college football, and he proposed that Power 4 schools, which the Big 12 is a member of, that Power 4 should only play each other. Now, I remember when Nick Saban made a similar type comment when it came to the Alabama Crimson Tide, and him saying essentially he wanted to play 9 or 10 or even 11 SEC teams and maybe one other game outside of that because he believed it was the best football at that level. Well, Kalani's not necessarily going to that extreme, saying that, hey, we should play only Big 12 teams and maybe one other game. But Kalani's proposal is he wants to play the 9 Big 12 conference games, but then he wants to play one. So the out-of-conference games, there's 3 other ones in the regular season, 12 games, one against the ACC, one against the SEC, and one against the Big 10. So you'd be facing 12 Power 4 opponents annually across the board. Now, is this going to come into effect at any point? No, just simply put, it's not going to happen because even some of his compatriots, Joey McGuire, and we talked about this on our little crossover Big 12 squad edition we did live at Big 12 Media Days on Tuesday, is Joey McGuire kind of fired back and said that seems like a step too far. But I can respect that Kalani Sitake is thinking outside the box. I have long said that I think FCS games are a blight on this sport. I believe that FCS games should be your annual spring game. You still get the FCS schools the checks that they need, whether it's the $250 to $500,000, maybe even $1 million to come and play you at the end of spring ball. It gives every athlete a chance to obviously show what they can do in a real game situation, and at the same time keeps the relationships between FCS and FBS schools strong there. That's what I believe should be happening with FCS games. But Kalani Sitake, man, would he be biting off more than he could chew? Because you'd be talking about if you go up against 12 Power 4 opponents and you don't have a good run, are you out on your rear end, speaking of a head coach? That's the concern I think many would have when it comes to such a scheduling proposal. But I can respect the fact that Kalani Sitake, he's willing to speak his mind, and he has ideas of what he'd like to see from college football. Other coaches like Deion Sanders said it on the record. He wants to see a salary cap in college football. Well, the simple fact of the matter is a salary cap has to go with a collective bargaining agreement, and we're apparently eons away from ever getting a CBA in place for college athletes, it feels like. But I can respect that these coaches are trying to get their ideas out there and going on the record speaking about them, but also having conversations off to the side with various media members and other personnel at the Big 12 at media days, was that there is a thought that the future of college football, it is changing fast, and nobody really has a good feel for where it ultimately is going to end up. I talked earlier on this podcast about the fact that this College Sports Commission, which has been in effect officially for 11 days, is already under fire. That's not a good sign, that it's already under scrutiny. It's already got people threatening legal action and the like, and people are upset with how they're operating things. That seems like it's already on shaky ground. And college sports, it is ecosphere that has always been one that's been on fairly sandy footing. It's never really been on what I would consider to be a stable, strong footing in any way, shape, or form, because simply put, you always have people trying to essentially either undermine or one up one another, whichever side of the coin you look at it from. I look at it, and the people I talked to down there Big 12 Media Days said that we just don't know where this ends up. But the way it feels like it's going to end up is that football in particular, it's going to have to create its own entity and become a minor league professional model, for lack of a better term, a miniature NFL. And I know that is going to anger a lot of people out there. Kyle Whittingham, Utah's head coach, said that he believes there is in the not too distant future that football players for a university, whether it's BYU, Utah, etc., won't ever even have to go to class to play football in this new league. That may be a reality. But the other thing I gleaned from talking to people at Big 12 Media Days is that the Big 12, they're not taking things lying down. You heard Brett Yormark espouse he wants the 5+11 model when it comes to the college football playoff to be the way things go. If he were to say anything else, it would essentially be him admitting essentially that the Big 10 and the SEC run this sport and that the Big 12 knows it's playing second fiddle and it just is going to acquiesce to their demands. Brett Yormark is, I think, striking out, and other people down there said that even behind the scenes, he may even be more vociferous in terms of trying to essentially say that, no, we're not going to say that you get 4 automatic bursts for the Big 10, 4 for the SEC, and we'll just take 2 each. Speaking of the ACC and the Big 12, he wants the Big 12 to have a chance to earn on the field. And yes, could that be a thing that backfires big time for the Big 12 if they continue to only get one program in the college football playoff annually? Yeah, it could, because you could have a guaranteed 2 spots under that 4-4-2-2-1 model. But I think the bigger point is that Brett Yormark, he's being defiant, but he's also making it very, very clear that the Big 12, they're not going to take things lying down. And I can respect that. I love the fact that he's standing up for his conference. He has a job to do. He represents the 16 universities that are in this conference, and it's his job to speak out for them and for their various university presidents or chancellors and to make their positions very, very clear and make it very clear across the board to the powers that be, whether that is the Big 10 or the SEC, or if you're the power players in TV, ESPN, Fox Sports, etc. Say, hey, we know what you guys are trying to do, and we ain't going to stand for it. We're not going to stand idly by and let you guys bully us into doing your bidding or think that we're just going to take it lying down. I love the fact that the Big 12 was as defiant as it was. And you also can tell that this is a conference. It's got a lot of pride in itself. Is it a league that could cannibalize itself once again this year with maybe the top programs being 9-3, maybe 10-2 at best come the end of the regular season? Yeah, it very well could be that case. But the same side of that is that you're going to have entertaining football from a whole lot of programs out there. When it comes to other leagues, you look at the Big 10 and the SEC that seem to be very top heavy, because you can look at 3 or 4 teams in each of those leagues and say, yeah, well, guess who the power players are in this league? The power players in the Big 12, they still need to kind of emerge and establish themselves. I think Texas Tech is on its way. I think BYU could be on its way if they can continue to win. But I think that the depth of the Big 12, the entertaining football, it's hopefully, at least in my estimation, going to get people more interested in this league because it's more unpredictable than it feels like other leagues out there, most notably the Big 2 that people like to talk about, the SEC and the Big 10, who seem to be dominated every single year by the same 3 or 4 teams in each of those leagues. So there you go. Few thoughts as it come off Big 12 Media Days. But as I said, I have, I did the math. It's 17 different interviews with BYU personnel, opposing media members, talking about BYU national media members, their perceptions of BYU, looking ahead to this upcoming season. They will start coming out over this next week to 2 weeks. I'll be fitting them into different parts of the podcast, and a lot of good thoughts, a lot of people talking about BYU, and you guys are going to hear it. It's exclusive content you won't find literally anywhere else. So stay tuned for that as we get back to it every single day next week. And hey, football season, for lack of a better term, it's here, everybody. Get ready for it. It's going to be a really, really fun time. We're like 3 weeks away from training camp opening up, and hey, away we go. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. As always, thank you for all y'all's support. Appreciate everything you guys do to support this show, subscribing, rating, reviewing, sharing with your family and friends, being guys like Mark and sending me swag like this to wear on the show. And as always, a big thank you to all of you for joining us, and make sure to join us once again on Monday with another full edition of Locked On Cougars right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.